Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste. This is great taste. Great tasting.
Hello, Fairfield. Once again, we are here with Great Taste, and we have a couple of hosts here, Steve Boss and also Kathleen DuBois. And today they've invited the Indian Hills students back. Yay. And there's all sorts of tasty, it's already laid out here, all sorts of tasty treats, and they're going to be working on some more stuff today. But if you are within the sound of our voice, that would be in your car, in your home, whatever. Drop everything you're doing. Come on by the club room over at Hy-Vee, because this is a wonderful thing. You should all be experiencing this. Great Taste, sponsored by, well, solar-powered KRUU FM, and also brought to you by FMC. Channel 9, I'm sorry? And of course, in Hy-Vee, always Hy-Vee. So without further ado, let's have a round of applause, please, for your hosts, Steve DuBois. Steve DuBois and Kathleen Boss. Yay!
You didn't know we got married, did you?
I didn't know that it was, that we flip-flop names like that.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
Wonderful. I'm glad my wife isn't here tonight. Hello, welcome to Great Taste on KRUU FM. I'm Steve Boss, and you are about to experience the 60 most delicious minutes on the radio. Tom Allen, our resident musician, is here. And we have two of our favorite, you are our favorites, right? Indian Hills culinary students. So. Sarah Valentine.
At least today.
Oh, I didn't say that. You did notice it. I didn't say it. Right. Sarah Valentine, Kurt Gowdy. And they have been very busy earlier in the day, as we can see right here. And this is going to turn into some absolutely luscious desserts. And tell me a little bit, Kurt, or tell everyone, what is this?
Steve, we start with pâte à choux, which is éclair paste. It's a classic French paste used for desserts and pastries. I have what they call profiteroles, or they can be used for cream puffs. You make basically a small swirl out of the pâte à choux and bake it on the sheet. It takes about 45 minutes to bake. You want to get that to where it's nice and dry on the outside, because it's made mostly of egg. And these are pretty versatile pieces here. We've also talked about adding cheese to these to make them more savory, served them more like a biscuit style.
That is a gougere.
And so that would be the gougere, yes.
Right, we're going to have that. And you and I had a little discussion earlier today. What did you tell me on the telephone? Do you remember? About the pâte à choux?
It's pretty pliable.
Not just that. But you said, oh, it's easy. It
is once you get used to it. If you've made it enough times, like we have, or you get enough information and you've seen it made enough times, it can become quite easy.
And do you know what I said to him? I said, maybe it's easy, but it's not easy to make really well, because I've had many profiteroles in my life, but only one that I remember where I ate it. So it's like anything else in the kitchen. It has a lot to do with the amount of attention that you put on it and the ingredients that you use.
The other thing too is that it takes a lot of time.
It does. I think I stood in front of the oven for about an hour and 15 minutes. We have a revolving oven at the school. So you watch your shelf come around, it goes back around, and it comes back around, and you're like waiting all this time. You're like, okay, we're almost there. We're almost there. It's got to turn color.
So there are many things in the kitchen that are not really necessarily that difficult, but just time-consuming.
Time-consuming, yeah. You've got to have a little patience with it, and also when you make, especially with the gruyères and the other desserts that you can make from that same shape, making that shape uniform on the pan is extremely important.
Yes, and actually, I don't know whether Jason can get a close-up of that, but those are all beautiful and uniform, really, really nice. And by the way, Jason FMC is here, and I guess you're James KRUU. You're here also, so thank you both for being here and making this broadcast work.
Are we going to learn how to make those?
I'm going to show everybody how to make all three. The middle one that I have is mini eclairs, which we like because they're great for hors d'oeuvres even, breakfast, desserts. You can fill those with any assortment of cream, top them with chocolate with powdered sugar. You know, they look really nice on a plate. And it's kind of hard to like overeat when you're eating mini desserts. So
how many people agree with what he just said? That it's hard to overeat when you're eating mini desserts? I don't think that.
It is.
I don't think that's true.
And then the other shape is kind of a oblong shape. It's also made of the pâte à choux. And I will show everybody how to cut a swan from that, and we'll fill that. Traditionally, we use whipped cream to fill those, and they're really a nice presentation piece to finish a nice meal with friends and family. So,
Sarah, what do you have to say about all this? I gave Sarah a little pep talk before the show. I said, Sarah, I want you to talk like you're on 4 cups of coffee, because Sarah tends to be very quiet. And I think that, you know, she's absolutely amazing, and she does tremendous work in the kitchen. And we just wanted her to, you know, tell us everything that every reaction that you have to what Kurt had to say.
Well, I agree that it can be easy to make after you've done it a few times. I know the first time I made it, it didn't feel as easy, but doing it 3, 4, 5 times, I think I've got it down. I think the hardest part is piping these out on the pan, because you have to put it in a pastry bag, and it takes a lot of finesse. You just gotta, you really gotta work with the dough, and you have to make sure you're not fighting with it, but you're working with it, you know.
Are we going to see that, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
We will be piping the gougere shape.
Excellent. You're bringing up a very interesting point. I'm rereading a book right now called, what is it called? It's called The Something of a Chef, The Making of a Chef by Michael Ruhlman. It's an excellent book, and it's about his time at the Culinary Institute of America. And the thing that I have just passed by, butter? Good. We love butter.
Gotta have butter.
We know that because we had when we had Chef Simone here. He used it. Anybody who was here that night? Oh yeah, a few people were here that night. He used a little bit of butter, didn't he? Yeah, it was just a little butter. But anyway, what I wanted to mention was that Ruhlman just finished in the book, part of the book that I'm in, he just finished taking his baking section, and he drew a very interesting distinction between bakers and cooks. It was very fascinating, because a baker and a cook, in general, if you've ever met professional people who are bakers and cooks, you'll find different personalities usually. You'll find much more type A's in the cooks and more laid back in the bakers. And one of the major reasons is that the baker has to be able to surrender to the yeast. He has to be able to surrender to the dough. The cook he feels or she feels totally in control. If a hollandaise breaks, I can fix it. If I'm trying to clarify a consommé and my raft breaks, I can fix it. But the baker has a very difficult time trying to fix a mistake, and especially can't do it in a hurry.
And I agree with that completely. I'm a lot more comfortable cooking than baking because, like you said, if you're cooking something, you can adjust it as you're going. You can taste it and you can change it to fit your needs. But when you're baking, you have to put everything up together. You have to put it in the oven and you pray. That's all you can do.
Well, now you do both. You bake a lot and you cook a lot.
And you pray a lot.
Right. I think baking is more scientific, because it's a chemical reaction that's happening. So
there's chemical reactions in cooking, dear.
But it's more. Well, it's like yeast and baking soda and that kind of thing. Yeah. Isn't it more chemical reactions?
I think they're all different pieces of ingredients that go into either cooking or baking, and there's all kinds of different reactions. Wait, let's hear what.
My mother used to say exactly what Kathy said.
Oh, well, then it must be right if her mother said so, right? And what did she say exactly?
Incredible baker, and she said you have to follow the recipe exactly because it is scientific and it is chemistry, and that's how you get what you.
Okay, well, I'm sure that we'd have some major disagreements between cooks here, but that's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I agree with Kathy and with Beverly here, because you can't really fudge on your measurements, or you really throw the whole. You can fudge on your measurements when you're cooking, but you can't really fudge on your measurements when you're baking.
That's true, but that's methodology. That doesn't have anything to do with chemical reactions or whether it has to do with the fact that baking has to be more precise. Though it's really interesting how I've seen some people, right, it has to be more precise, but that has nothing to do with chemical reactions. Everything, when you combine different elements, there's always different chemical reactions that are going to take place. Oh, well.
Steve doesn't bake.
We're going to forget this topic. Tom, we need a break, buddy. Sunday, there is an open house. Actually, it's the start of a weekend celebration for KRUU, because KRUU is celebrating its 6th anniversary. And so on Saturday, you can come to KRUU's headquarters, right? And 1 to 5 in the afternoon, and get all kinds of wonderful, delicious things to eat, take a tour of the studios. And on Sunday night, Marco Benevento is going to be here. He's a tremendous jazz musician, and that's also part of the celebration. He'll be at Cafe Paradiso at 7 p.m. So that's this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, KRUU's open house. Be there. Yes, let's find out what you're doing.
Okay, what I'm doing here is I'm starting to make the pot au choux. What we have in here is milk, butter, and a little bit of salt. What we're doing is we're melting the milk with the butter, and we have to bring it up to a boil. And we've got flour and eggs, which are the only 2 other ingredients. There's no sugar. So once this gets hot, I can add my flour and cook it until it forms a ball. And then we're going to transfer it to the mixer and add the eggs slowly after we cool it a little bit. And it's going to form the paste that we can pipe out into all these lovely pastries.
Do you have to work with it in terms of the flour and the milk, in terms of getting it moist enough or sticky enough?
Well, it being sticky enough or the right consistency has more to do with the eggs than the milk and the flour. The more of the moisture comes from the eggs than the milk.
And what type of dough are we looking for in terms of consistency?
It's a very slack dough. It needs to be able to be piped out. It's sticky, but it holds its shape.
Okay. Now, interesting, I wonder, have you guys worked with water instead of milk before in making a pot au choux?
I've cut in half, used half water, half milk before.
I just was reading that some people like to work with water instead of milk because of the moisture content of the water, and they feel that the water actually makes, because it turns into steam, makes for an airier dough. And I was just wondering what kind of experience you've had with that.
I can kind of see that, yeah. Mm-hmm. There is a little bit of difference when you cut that milk down in half, texturally even in that dough.
Well, it'll be interesting. It'll be very, very interesting to taste. I tasted your dough, by the way, before the show, and it's delicious and very, very nice. I like the moisture content, and it's a fairly plain type of dough. Did you taste it by the chance?
You tasted the dough?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Would you like to taste it? The plain?
Sure.
Okay, it's cooked, right? It's ready. It's okay. I can see that we're going to have a very interesting time. We may end up. Who talked about being married? I mean, we may end up, having a fight before the 60 minutes is over. I've had it. Thank you.
All right, see, we've hit a boil on the milk and butter mixture in the pan, and you got to keep that stirred, or your milk will scald to the bottom.
Okay, so that's a very important point. So you've got your temperature. You still got your temperature up pretty high, though, right?
Yeah, I still run a pretty high, and then all your flour has to go in at once.
So all the flour goes in at once, and you're stirring it, and it's going to...
You'll cook the flour down a little bit and get the starches cooked in there.
Oh, you know what I have to do, Kurt, because thankfully Suzanne came in, and Suzanne knows how to pronounce that word so perfectly. I just want her to say pot au choux for us, so that pot au choux, the dough.
Pat au choux.
Oh, Isn't that lovely? That's so much nicer than any of us can say. Thank you. and so you're going to get rid of all those. We got to get rid of all the lumps, right?
Can you show everybody what it looks like?
Yep. We pretty much start out at this stage here. I compare it to like a wad of tapioca pudding.
Looks like potatoes.
Right, yeah, tapioca pudding, potato kind of look. The funny thing is as you make this, it'll start to smell like gravy and look like mashed potatoes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
It does look like mashed potatoes. Why does it smell like gravy?
Well, when you make gravy, you thicken it. You start with the roux. You use the drippings off of your roast beef or whatever it is you've cooked, and you add flour to make the roux that thickens the gravy. And that's basically what we're doing because we have milk and butter, and then we add the flour. So when it cooks, it smells like cooking gravy, and it looks like mashed potatoes. Very confusing to your senses.
Yeah.
And we're going to use the whole egg, too. We're not just using yolks, right?
Yep, the whole egg.
Yes.
For this size of batch, we're looking at about 9 eggs.
And you're going to make, you're going to make a lot of pastry with that, though.
Yeah, it's the same size batch we made all that with.
All that.
And I don't think that, honestly, I don't think that the pastry tasted that much of egg, do you?
It tasted a little eggy. But
Little.
You get a little egg in there. Not much.
We're going to carry this theme throughout.
We're married. You're just supposed to say yes, dear.
As long as all the pans stay on the counter, guys.
Okay,
So, as you get it cooked, it's going to smooth out a little bit, and then start pulling away from the bowl itself.
Okay, so we want to get it to the consistency where it starts to pull away from the sides.
Right.
All right.
Right. It'll naturally, even if you just stir right through the middle and kind of fold it together, it's going to start to pull itself in and tighten up on you. And you can kind of go by feel even as you work it. Once you get used to it, you kind of get a feel for the dough.
Lovely.
Just trying to make sure we've got everything blended in nicely.
And then we're going to add the eggs one at a time in the mixer. Now, can you do this by hand, or you have to have a mixer?
You can do it by hand. In fact, you can leave it in the saucepan and do it by hand. But you'd be mixing until your arm felt like it was going to fall off.
Oh, we should have asked Kurt to do that.
No. There's some things I'll mix by hand. This is not one of them, Steve.
So is it really important to get every lump out if you're going to be using the mixer?
It helps, especially depending on the style of mixer. A lot of home mixers, the beaters don't rotate and counter-rotate also. So you wind up with a lot of folding action in some of the home beaters that don't have a flat paddle like the KitchenAids that we use here and the professional mixers that we use at school. So you wind up with a lot of those folded back in. It's also good to look and make sure that your flour is broke down and all blended in nice and evenly. And once you get that nice even looking dough.
So it's very even looking and no lumps.
Nice and
we're looking
smooth.
also to make sure that there's no little hidden circles, bunches of flour in there.
Right.
And it looks pretty good. It looks really nice and smooth.
So, and then we'll go right over into the mixer.
And you don't have to worry about cooling it or anything like that.
No, you'll
it's right
actually-
into the mixer.
In the mixer.
It cools in the mixer.
As it mixes, the metal bowl will wick away the heat, and you have to let it cool just enough so that when you put the eggs in, the eggs won't scramble on you.
That's an interesting point because right now it's extremely hot and they would scramble.
Yeah, if you put the eggs right in there, it would cook the eggs. You would have all scrambled eggs in your pot of choux, and that would be terrible.
So how long are we going to mix it before we put those eggs in there? How do you know? How can you tell?
You can tell by, right now, if you touch the bowl, it's hot. You wait until the bowl is cool enough that you can put your hand on it without feeling like it's burning you.
Okay, so basically you're just waiting for 2-3 minutes or so until you can put your hand on it and you don't have to pull your hand away right then and there. Okay. You want to maybe you should put your hand on there.
It's not that hot.
Darn, I should have asked you about a minute ago.
It cools rather rapidly. When you drop that in there, you're on about 215 degrees on average, and then you want to bring it down to around the 150 mark when you start mixing your eggs in.
This is Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. We're live at Hy-Vee for the most delicious 60 minutes on the radio. And I'm wondering, can everybody hear okay? All right, that's good. We're glad to hear. We're glad you're here, and you're going to be really glad in another 40 minutes or so when you get to taste all of these wonderful things. And I have to say that Kurt has been so wonderful because Kurt said, "Oh, this is what we're going to do," and I said, "Kurt, I love gougere. Can you make gougere?" Oui. Isn't it nice how I include myself, right? Oui. And he said, oui. Right. And
So we're doing French cooking.
and I said, profiteroles. I love profiteroles. Okay, we'll do it. So it's just it's a marvelous evening. We're very happy. Thank you. And James, you must be really excited. Because you were the only one that clapped then. Yeah, but you're just going to remember that they're not really there, and you'll eat them anyway. That's how we have to do it. Anyway, I want to mention that next week we are doing an archive show. So please, you're absolutely welcome to come here next Wednesday at 7 p.m., but we won't be here. So you can come on October 3rd, though. You will be here? What are you doing? And you'll have to come up here and tell us what you're doing, because Dennis Lopp was just saying that he's going to be here next Wednesday, so it must be something exciting, I'll bet.
Well, to be honest, I wish I planned that far ahead. But we usually, when you do an archive show, we've tried very hard to make sure that we do an activity in the room at the same time so that you all, who are so generous to come out and participate in the live audience, still have an experience to come out on a Wednesday night, because I really think we've developed a really good Wednesday night activity for the citizens of Fairfield. And so we try to do at least something. So we'll have a cooking class or an activity at the same time slot next Wednesday.
So you have one activity you wanted to mention to everyone also that's coming up this Sunday?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm so glad I get to do that. Hy-Vee is and I'm very honored to pull together the community activity victory celebration for Matt Stutzman. He's our local Paralympic athlete. A lot of you have heard me talk a lot about him. And this Sunday, we are doing his victory celebration. He won a silver medal at the 2012 London Paralympics in archery. He has no arms, which makes it even more tremendous that he won his silver medal. And we're going to take a moment as a community to pay honor to him and show our appreciation of his accomplishment. If Matt was standing here today, he would tell you that he's going to take that opportunity to say thank you to Fairfield for their support and what they've given him over the years. And so it's just going to be a really fun family activity at the Jefferson County Fairgrounds starting at noon. We will open the grounds. There will be food from Barbecues out of Ottumwa, and Hy-Vee will be there selling some beverage, that sort of thing. We have lots of children's activities, so it's a family-friendly event. We want you to bring kids. We want you to bring your friends. I've been telling everybody all day, grab your friends, grab your family, grab people you don't even like, and just bring them. We just need a lot of people.
I'll bring Kathy.
Wow. Wow. So anyway, but it starts at noon. The ceremony will start at 2 o'clock. And we just want everybody to come out and attend and celebrate this amazing achievement by a local Fairfield resident. It's such a crazy thing that he's done. So, this Sunday, starting at noon, 2 p.m.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay, so we're going to get back to what we're doing on tonight's show, and that is making
Pâteau choux and profiterole.
But did you know that the first profiteroles probably came from Italy, not France?
Profiterole, I don't think so. Profiterole.
Yes.
Bon, c'est un mot français.
All right. So while Dennis was talking, these guys were busy whipping up the dough, adding one egg at a time, and you're on a high speed, huh? You're moving the speeds back and forth?
I was doing up to about a medium. Sometimes it helps get that incorporated a little more and tighten it up. So we've got one egg left out of our 9, I think. We're going to put it in.
What are we looking for exactly?
We're just looking for the consistency of the dough, looking at how slack it is.
You were ready to stop before you put the last 3 eggs in, and you told her not to. Why was that?
It was a little too loose. A little too slack in the dough. I put my spatula in it and pull it back out, and it just kind of dribbled off there. And I don't want to lose that shape when we pipe it out through a large star bit.
So when you put your spatula in,
right,
How do you want it to react?
I want it to be a little stickier than it was.
That looks still a little
runny.
runny.
Yep.
So now what are we going to do, bakers, to fix that?
Because we have to have the right chemical reaction. Don't we?
Absolutely. We absolutely have to have the right chemical reaction. So it's interesting to see this because we're watching it come together. Meantime, also, we have part of the gougere is this is going to actually be the dough for the gougere, right? Oh, yeah.
We're going
to
take the dough and break it down.
And what is this dark chocolate going to end up on?
We're going to use that on top of the eclairs, the mini eclairs, and also on the profiteroles.
Nice. Very, very nice.
Are you making a cream filling?
We are actually going to whip cream as soon as we get done with that mixer. We'll wash it up and whip our cream as they bake.
It's really going to be a tough evening. I can see that. All right, so last week I asked people to think about whether or not they wanted to live with beans or with squash. Now, what does that mean? Because some of you weren't here last week. So the idea is this. It's a game. The game is you have to decide, do I want beans for the rest of my life in any form that I can cook them in, or do I want squash? And if you pick beans, you can't have any squashes, no matter what kind of squash, winter, summer, in between. If you pick squashes, you can't have any beans. So the person who comes up with the best reason why they want beans or why they want squash is going to win Melissa's Everyday Cooking with Organic Produce from Frederick Wiley and Sons. And so I'm going to let you think about that for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to talk to a few people to see whether or not they want beans or squash. Do you have a question? Sure.
Do beans include lentils?
Do beans include lentils? Very, very good question. Are pulses going to be included in, legumes? No, I think we're going to use, yes, they're all part of the same family, I think. I think it's okay. I think it's all right, don't you think? I mean, what do you guys think? Should we do it that way or not? We're making up the rules. Okay. Oh.
I say yes.
If she says yes, I have to say yes. See how quickly I learn? It's only been a half hour. So let me ask you a question. I want people to understand that they're listening to community radio. And it's very important to understand that community radio is radio that is supported by the community. We don't have advertising as such. And there's something that everybody can do that's very simple and easy for them to do by going to the homepage of the station and clicking in a particular spot, and they can make monthly pledges, which would allow them to not only hear this show ongoing and support this program, but also support 98% of the programming that is locally produced on KRUU.
That's correct. And also all our listeners online, almost 1 million hits a month. So I know you don't quite taste the food the same when you're in Topeka, but I guarantee it's as good as it sounds.
Well, so what do they need to do?
Well, if I was them, what I would do is go to the homepage, KRUUFM.com. On the right-hand side, there's a little place that you can support community radio, and not just any community radio, the Midwest's only solar-powered station, and support shows like Steve Boss, 6 years doing this.
That's crazy.
6 years, that is crazy. And I just want to say one thing about Steve. He has never said this, but all those years before, he was bringing the food in himself. And we're really, really delighted, and with Kathy and Kathy DuBois. And we're really delighted to have this partnership now with Hy-Vee and with Indian Hills and all this. So I just want to, and I also have to say, the KRUU here that comes out regularly seems to be expanding, Steve.
Well, we like it. It's really fun to have all of you here. It's really enjoyable, and we hope that you have a good time. And all I can say is that if you weren't here for Kathy's lasagna, you were lucky, because I thought people were going to be trampled, trying to get to that lasagna. And it was amazing how quickly she had to save me a piece. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had any. It's outrageous.
I don't think I would have saved you one tonight.
Kurt, save me. What's up?
I added your cheese in about 3 ounces in there, and then I've added a pinch of nutmeg.
Yeah, add a little bit more cheese for me, will you?
All right. We can do that. We got room.
When you want to add 3 ounces of cheese, for me, you got to add 4.
Okay.
Or at least, because
What kind of cheese are you using?
It's actually a Prairie Breeze.
It's a Milk Creamery, which is a local cheese maker. And honestly, I think this is probably the best cheddar cheese I have ever eaten. And I've eaten a lot of cheese in my day.
It is a wonderful cheddar.
And it's a wonderful cheddar.
And it actually won third prize a couple of years ago in London at a cheddar contest. So it's made about an hour from here. And they also have, if you've never tasted it, they have Prairie Rose, which is a Swiss type of cheese that was actually something that occurred by accident at the creamery, and then they've continued to make it. So it's a wonderful Swiss type cheese at Milton Creamery. And we wanted to have them on the show, but unfortunately, I can't remember now. They're either Mennonites or Amish, and so they politely said that they couldn't come.
So we've folded in the cheese, nutmeg, a little bit of salt and pepper, and you want to get it nice and evenly mixed in there, and then we're going to put that in our bag and pipe it out on the pan.
Okay, we can't wait to watch, and I'll describe for our listeners exactly what they need to do. Now, anyone can, if you've never used, for example, a little piping bag with a tip, you can actually, you don't have to go out and actually pay for it. You can actually take a little plastic bag if you want, cut the end off of it, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yes, you can.
Little sandwich bag, cut the end off of it, works great.
But it won't be as pretty because obviously with the tips that you can buy, and you probably have a whole kit worth of tips with different types of designs.
I don't, but he does.
So.
All right, so we're going to put it in there. And again, would you just describe how that dough should be?
It's slack. I mean, it's really slack, but it still holds some shape to it.
Okay. Slack, but hold some shape.
Your star tip will hold the lines like we see in the other ones, and for those on the radio, there are lines that ridges that have been created by it's actually used for cake decorating most of the time.
And everybody can see that who's in the studio audience, right? Because you can see these different things are up there. And did we miss that? Jason, have you been able to get this so that you can get close up on this so that when you watch this on YouTube later, you can see the little lines and the tips? Oh, I think he's got so many cameras, I don't even know which one he's using. So he's got it all. I'm sorry I dropped that one. I hope I'll be forgiven. So what do you think? Have you ever made this dough before?
No, I've never made anything like this before.
I think it's wonderful because you can do so many different things with it. You can do savory, you can do sweet. And the thing that I think is also interesting is if you didn't know this, how many people have been to New Orleans and been to Café du Monde, for example, in New Orleans? Only a few people. All right. If you've been there and you've had beignets, that's the same dough. It's just that instead of baking it, they're frying it. So it's a very interesting thing. It's the exact same type of dough. And it makes sense, right? Because it's French pastry.
Okay, so they put some of it in the bag and then they decided it wasn't the right consistency, right?
I'm kind of working without a net up here. I usually use a scale to weigh my ingredients out. And we got here and realized that we didn't have a scale here.
We're back to the original discussion at the top of the hour about how important it is to be
precise. And what a chemical thing baking is.
And so now we're trying to strike that balance again with the flour percentage. And we are.
I think we got it.
You getting there? You're getting there. Okay, well that's really good. While we get there, who's ready to tell us a little bit about whether they're going to prefer to eat beans for the rest of their life or squash for the rest of their life? All right, hold on. Here we go. Beans or squash?
Beans.
You better have more to say than that.
Beans, because I like dal.
Okay, so that's it. So just simple and easy. Okay. Beans or squash?
I would prefer beans because there's more versatility. You could sprout beans. They taste different. They have a different nutritional value, etc., etc.
Actually, I like both, but beans...
You can't have both.
Oh, please, don't make me make this big decision.
You have disqualified yourself from the game.
I want to speak on behalf of the beans because when you combine them with the grain, the rice, they do make a complete protein, which is one advantage of the beans.
Okay, that's good. All right, let's see where else.
I go for squashes because they caramelize. They're delicious. You could do so many things with them. Put them in so many dishes, and that includes zucchini as well as the ones that you could bake that are beautiful.
Yes, winter, summer, whatever.
Exactly.
All right, Dennis.
Well, I can't participate for the book, but I would say you have to keep the beans because think about how I would throw out to consider that beans are so used, for example, so prevalent in Mexican cooking and all of those, different international flavors that you have beans. And so I think you have to keep beans because otherwise you lose your Mexican food, and I would starve without that.
Okay, Dennis. We don't want Dennis to starve, but, let's see. Beans, squash.
Squash, because they are fresher than the beans. The beans are older, and they have to be dried. So, and also because if I wanted to eat fresh squash all the time, I'd have to be in a warm climate all the time.
Fresh beans, you mean?
Fresh squash. I go for squash. I don't want beans.
I know, but you said if you wanted to eat fresh squash, you'd have to be in a warm climate all the time?
That's my point.
Oh, okay. Took me a little while to get that. I understand. Then why do you live in the Midwest?
I don't.
Ah, okay. Good. In other words, you should have a sign on that says just visiting.
I live here when it's warm.
I see. Okay. Now, the other thing is, though, there are lots of fresh beans. There's green beans, right? And there's lima beans. And I'm just...
The worst experience I ever had in my life was lima beans.
Now we know why you picked squash. Okay. Anybody else who wants to participate? Greens or squash. If you participate, you have a chance to win. Greens or squash?
I'd say beans because of the protein you get in beans as opposed to squash.
Interesting. But here's the other thing that you have to think about, and I want to give everybody the opportunity to change their mind. Because a couple of people have said they say beans because of the protein. But don't forget, because this is a distinction, maybe I didn't draw close enough. It's not that you have to give up anything else. It's just that you have to give up either beans or squash. So you can have plenty of protein by eating cheese or meats or whatever. So are you going to stick with beans?
Yes.
Okay, beans. Boy, I'll tell you, beans have really been...
What about you, Steve?
Beans or squash? I think I'm picking beans. Because somebody mentioned earlier the versatility. I think there's a lot of course there's so many different types of squashes, but if you look at the number of varieties, and I've forgotten, that exist in nature of beans or squash, there are quite a few more varieties of beans that can be consumed and fixed culinarily than squashes.
Something I didn't think about, if I give up squash, does that mean I can't have a jack-o'-lantern for Halloween?
That is exactly correct. You can't ever look at those squashes again. So we're going to think about, this is going to be a tough deliberation, so we're going to think about it while we listen to a song called Little Train that has to do with food. Tom Allen.
Okay, hope this isn't too loud on the mic. Yeah. Every verse ends in something about food, so that's why this song about a little train is relevant to us. Little tiny train, you disappeared and came again. You make a rolling racket and you wobble like a gander, then you slide into a tunnel just like honey in a funnel. Little train, little tiny train, your loss is everybody's gain. You never stay located, but the people would have hated if they'd paid their dimes and nickels and sat down and stayed like pickles in a jar. Little tiny train, did they take you from your mother? You were 6 cars yesterday, and you're only 2 today. You better eat your spinach, because if you don't, you're finished, little train.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so during the Little Train break, Kathy and I had a tete-a-tete, and we got along, okay? And
we agreed.
We agreed, and so go ahead, announce the winner.
The big winner, this is the big moment, it's Helen. the squash lady.
And I have known Kathy since 1974.
If I'd have known that, you would have been disqualified. So the conflict continues. Thank you. Now, it's all right. Okay, so how's it going, ladies and gentlemen? What's happening over here?
We've got the gruyères in the oven, and then I'm working right now on filling the eclairs with whipped cream that we've made. In just a couple of minutes it took to play the song, we whipped the cream up, added the sugar and vanilla.
Okay, I'm just wondering what was in it. Sugar and vanilla.
Yep.
Right?
I prefer to use powdered sugar myself. Most cookbooks are going to call for regular granulated sugar. It's just a personal preference.
Okay, so this is for the cream in the eclair.
Yep.
And can you tell us about the chocolate that you're putting on top of the eclair? What's in that?
That chocolate is actually, say it was at 75%?
72%.
72% dark cocoa. And then I add a splash of olive oil to that. It kind of helps with the finish.
The shine. It makes it shine.
Is that French?
Kurt, we can't. No one out there who's listening can see you smile. So anyway.
No, it wasn't French olive oil.
And we're talking about this. Are you
Yeah,
one of the?
Asking why they use that brand? Is there
This is
about?
King Arthur flour. Is just the flour that they happen to use for this evening's performance. And King Arthur is a tremendous supplier of baking products, flours, and other products in New England. And
No GMO flour. No GMO grain in their flour.
okay, I
You
didn't.
said to me on the phone.
I didn't even know that there was a possibility that could be, but maybe that's true. Anyway, what's interesting, I think, is that how many people would have thought to add olive oil to chocolate? Anybody? No one's. You've one person has thought about it. Because what did you make? What did you make that you added olive oil to chocolate, Denise? Remember, you said you didn't want to be on camera, but you are now. So
I have a great chocolate cake recipe, and I have used olive oil in it as opposed to like sunflower oil or something like that.
it's a very interesting experience if you've never had olive oil with chocolate. I had a gelato once that was at one of Mario Batali's restaurants, and what they did was it was vanilla gelato, and above the gelato, resting on the lip of the little container, was a circle of chocolate, dark chocolate, and then they gave you a little warmed beaker of wonderful extra virgin olive oil, and you poured the extra virgin olive oil through exactly on the chocolate, and it melted down into the gelato, and it was absolutely delicious. Really, really wonderful. Yes, but it has to be really great chocolate and really great olive oil. You wouldn't want to be doing it with
And great gelato.
yes, all three, absolutely delicious. Gosh, I hope that I just realized that I use my phone to keep us informed as to when the timing of the show itself, because I have an atomic clock on my phone. And it just told me right now that I only have 10% of power left. So I don't know whether we're going to know when to get off or not. So we may keep going, but I'm sure that Andy Bargerstock, who follows us on KRUU FM, will turn us off at the top of the hour so that everybody can listen to his tremendous show of music, Fringe Toast. 2 hours of the best. And I think actually this week's show is the best of Fringe Toast, the 6th anniversary edition. So if you've never listened to that, you might want to tune that in right afterwards. And of course, it's streaming at www.KRUUFM.com. You are listening to the most delicious 60 minutes on the radio. Of course, no one would know that, even in the studio audience, until after these 60 minutes. But I am certain that that's what's going to happen. And I especially can't wait for the gougere. Is there anything we need to know about piping, Kurt, into filling these different items?
Into filling these, this is where it really comes in, where you have to have a tip. You can't kind of cheat like we did there, or you can do there. I'm just simply pushing the tip in and then backing it out with even pressure. You don't want to over squeeze the bag because you'll have a mess on your hands and everywhere else. So.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, one of the things that I was wondering about, Kathy, while we're continuing to bake here, is have you made anything interesting this past week that we need to learn about?
I started a diet this week.
I knew that.
After all the lasagna, I had to go on a diet. Let's see. No, nothing exciting.
Yes, I'm certain of that. Okay, so we're not going to talk about it. Now, let me ask you another question. It was a follow-up to that. Will you be participating?
No.
So I want to make sure that everybody who's here watches her, and if you see her trying to take any desserts, slap her hand, because she's already told us. Right now, what we're doing is actually what Sarah's doing is starting to dip the eclairs into the chocolate, and they look lovely right on top there, having a nice little burst of chocolate on top of the eclair. It's great. So one thing that's happened recently that I wanted to also mention to our listeners is that I've started to think really seriously about trying to become more Did I hurt you? I just crushed your hand. I started to. You shouldn't put your hand where I might crush it. So I started to think very seriously about what is important in terms of reading and keeping yourself informed about cooking and how to make yourself a better cook. So I have a couple of suggestions that I think are things that you can easily adopt, and we've actually talked about a couple of these things before. But the first thing that you can do, and it all goes back to the beginning of this hour, is you can get yourself a copy of On Food and Cooking, The Science and Lore of the Kitchen by Harold McGee. This is essentially looked at as a Bible by most professional cooks and amateur cooks alike. And it's not only a great reference book, but it's a book that you can actually read and just pick up, and you will learn so many things about why different foods go with each other, how they combine, and all the different chemical reactions that take place. So Mr. McGee is the recognized expert. And by the way, do you guys read this in your curriculum at all?
In our program, no.
No? So
I mean, maybe leisure reading.
Well, all right. Let me just say that the Culinary Institute of America makes certain that all their students read that. So just so, because I was just getting ridiculed by everyone here, so I had to make sure I said that. I think it's really a very good book, and I've used it as a reference many, many times, even looking up, for example, why do you get gas after eating beans? So fascinating. The purpose of the show is to keep everyone informed.
Helen won't get any gas.
The second thing I want to recommend is a publication that is very not very well known among the food community in terms of, we'll say, normal everyday cooks who are out there buying copies of Bon Appetit and Cooking Light, and Gourmet used to, because it's not there anymore, but it's no longer around, but buying those types of things. But if you really want to be informed about what's called the art of eating, then this is the publication to get. Really, when you think about it, all these other publications that I mentioned have millions of subscribers. This publication probably has less than 7,000 or 8,000 subscribers, but it's been around for quite a few years. Ed Bear has actually been a guest on the show, probably in the first year of the show, James, I'm thinking was when Ed was on. And it's always fascinating. It's a quarterly journal. So I highly recommend The Art of Eating. And this was just one particular issue that I was looking back on from 2006 about Olympia oysters. And I'm just curious, has anybody here ever been to the Olympia area of around Seattle and eaten Olympia oysters? No. Okay, so, well, I'm like, after reading this article, I just have to go there and eat Olympia oysters. And I don't know what, Kathy DuBois is playing with my clock right now, my phone, so who knows if that's ever going to work. Last thing that I want to recommend, we had John Martin Taylor on the show several weeks ago, and last week I had the pleasure of my wife reading the first 70 or 80 pages of this book to me when we were driving back and forth from Ames. And I have to say that it's been a long time since we had really delved into this book, and it's absolutely fascinating. Hoppin' John's Low Country Cooking. John Martin Taylor was the person responsible for reviving all the traditional knowledge of low country cooking 20 years ago when this book was published. And so if you're interested in learning a little bit about the history of the low country and fascinating things that you'll find out, for example, that pilau, which most people associate with Indian food, was a very basic part of the dishes, of the traditional dishes of the low country, because of so many people so many different influences that came over with the different settlers. There's a lot of Jewish influence in the Low Country because Charleston was it was actually the site of the first temple in the United States. There's tremendous West African influence because of the slave trade and the tens and tens of thousands of slaves that were part of this culture, and many other influences also from the Caribbean. So it's a fascinating cuisine and probably one of the most unique cuisines that makes up the different types of cooking that goes on in this country, and it's very, very limited geographically to a very small area. And I've been enjoying many meals of grits lately because when you read Low Country cooking, you have to just go out and make yourself some grits. So really, really delicious. So those are a couple of things that I thought that you might find fascinating. All right. Where are we?
Well, Kurt here is working on the swans. I prepped up our piping bag so that we can make the necks for the swans, but I have to wait for the sheet pan. What he's done is he's taken those oblong shapes and he's cut them, like butterflied them. And
when you say butterflied them, what does that mean?
Well, if you're talking about the savory side of cooking, butterflying, as if you butterfly it like a chicken breast, you just slice it in half horizontally and lay it open. So he's just cut them horizontally in half, and then he's taking the tops that he cut off and cutting them in half and making wings out of them. I'm going to, once the sheet pan comes out of the oven, I'm going to pipe the necks. It's just a little S shape on the sheet pan that you bake separately, and you stick it right between the wings as the head, and it's a swan dessert. And we'll dust that with a little powdered sugar.
So you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of magic tricks, because you look at somebody doing magic and you just kind of go, oh my gosh, I mean, how in the world did they ever do anything like that? And when I look at beautiful things that are crafted by pastry chefs, like the picture that's on the blog post of the little swan necks, I think, how in the world did they do all that? And you just took the mystique out of it. It's something that's very practical and easy to do. And just seeing Kurt make the wings, it's great. I mean, you've taken the top that you sliced and you've sliced it in half and you're just making wings out of it.
Yep, you're just going to cross it over so you get that curve that runs along the outside. You get that on the top now. So if you reverse them and stick them on, you get that arc of the wing top instead of a flat cut that you'll get from splitting it down the middle.
That's awesome. So what do we have to do? We have to wait for the sheet pan to come out. You said where the gougere baking. They look really big.
Yeah, this pastry dough, it's leavened. It doesn't have any baking powder or yeast in it, but it's leavened by the steam. The milk, the water in it, as it bakes and heats up, the water evaporates and the steam makes it puff up, which is why it's so important to cook them long enough, because if you take them out of the oven too soon and the eggs have not coagulated enough, it won't be strong enough to hold up and it will actually fall in on itself. Just like a souffle, you take it out of the oven and it falls. These will do the same thing if you don't bake them long enough.
Interesting. So this show, by the way, is not only on KRUU FM every Wednesday at 7 p.m. and Friday at 7 a.m., but also you can find it on Fairfield Media Center's channel, which I have no idea what channel that is off the top of my head. So Jason, help me out here. Channel 9 on Mediacom or Lisco Cable. Okay, Channel 9 on Mediacom or Lisco Cable. And what time does that run?
It doesn't run a particular time at the moment, but if you go to our website, fairfieldmediacenter.com, you can watch it at any time.
So you can actually find a stream for this show at fairfieldmediacenter.com. So all of our listeners who are interested in actually seeing what goes on here, could be a little frightening for you, but if you're willing to take that chance, you can turn it on. And I wonder, Tom, what kind of music do you think should go with scaring potential audience viewers or whatever they're called? I'm not even sure. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. We should do something for Halloween, but I don't think we have anything planned like that. I want to mention that, again, we won't be here next Wednesday, but Dennis said there will be activity here next Wednesday. But the following Wednesday, which is October 3rd, our guest is going to be Meredith McCarthy, and her topic is healing cuisine. Meredith McCarthy is going to be coming to Fairfield because she's getting an award. She's a graduate of Parsons College, and she's getting an award to be added to, I guess, it's called the Wall of Fame in the Wall of Honor, the Wall of Honor, thank you, in the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center. And Meredith is going to be cooking a particular soup that I think is made of beans. And she is an instructor in the Bay Area on healing cuisine. So I think it'll be a fascinating hour. That's Wednesday, October 3rd, coming to you live at Hy-Vee, 7 p.m. with KRUU FM, Hy-Vee, and Fairfield Media Center. Kath?
Smelling good.
Yes, it is.
You smell-
It's smelling very delicious. I'm really looking forward to it. By the way, one last time, there is an open house this Saturday and Sunday celebrating KRUU's 6th anniversary. James, can you believe that KRUU has been around for 6 years?
Saturday only for the open house, 1 to 5. And then Sunday night, Marco Benevento, Brooklyn-based musician, awesome, came last time. The place was packed. Also want to remind folks, almost 300 archive shows on KRUU's website as well of great taste. So there's some resource for you too.
I think that's amazing. It's quite a bit. So we're happy to welcome back also, just in case he thinks that he wasn't missed. Bob Shrem is here, and he was probably on the East Coast praying that his Yankees would not give away their what used to be the best record in baseball before the All-Star break, and now they're barely hanging on for their lives. But we won't get into that because I teased him last year about the Giants, and then they went and won the Super Bowl. So hey, you know what? I probably just helped the Yankees right then and there, so that'll be fine.
I always am for the Yankees.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
good.
definitely.
Okay, whatever, Kath. You know, we're not gonna deal with it. I want to thank, as always, our Indian Hills students, because you guys are great, and it's just absolutely terrific that you come every Wednesday, once a month. And that's not every Wednesday, is it? Once a month on Wednesdays, and do this show with us, and it's fantastic. We are so thrilled to always have you here, and you always teach us some great stuff. So, do you have the show planned for next month yet, Kurt?
I don't yet, Steve. We've just got a fresh group of new students in for the fall term, and I want to get with them and talk and see what they want to do. See if there's any new fresh ideas out there.
Great, and I do see another student who's back in the back. She hasn't been up here all evening. Is she hiding from us or what? No, she's not hiding. Okay, so and is she one of the new students?
She is.
Yes, she is.
That's great. All right, so make sure you watch these guys, and they're doing a terrific job. And what's going on right now? Tell us a little bit about ice cream.
Working on what they call the profiteroles, cutting the tops off again. Basically putting ice cream in that, and we'll put the top back on and drizzle chocolate, maybe a little powdered sugar on top of that.
I remember that used to be one of my favorite restaurants desserts in a restaurant that I really loved in New York, where they'd bring a copper pot of chocolate to the table, and you just drizzle it on your whole plate.
Oh, I like that. We're going to have some fun. I'm sorry that those of you listening can't enjoy it, but that's what happens when you listen to radio. You have to just enjoy the taste of the airwaves. You've been listening to KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. This has been Great Taste on KRUU FM, and I'm Steve Boss, Kathy DuBois. We appreciate everything from the Indian Hills students, Jason Strong and Hy-Vee. See you next week.
Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste. This is great taste. Great tasting.